welcome to this edition of the CCN podcast. I'm your loyal host, Paul Medore. On this episode, I've got John Barrett, the esteemed host of the Let's Talk Bitcoin show, Bitcoins and Gravy, and I've got Andrew Vegetabile, the director of the Litcoin Association, a group which performs similar functions that the Bitcoin Foundation was intended to perform for Bitcoin. So these both run a little long, so let's just jump right into them. For reference, if you hear the following sound, that meant that part had been cut out and we didn't need it, so we skipped it. Just in case people notice a time change, we decided to put in there a little musical stop so they would have a sure way to know there had been one. And I'm on the line here with Mr. John Barrett. Honored to have you, sir, from the Bitcoins and Gravy program on Let's Talk Bitcoin. Wanted to talk to you a little today about, being an artist who works for tips in Bitcoin. How did you find out about Bitcoin? What's your background otherwise? From listening to your program, I get the sense that you don't have like a technical background.
Yeah, you caught that, huh? I do not have a tech background. My background is varied, everything from woodworking to pottery to writing music, which I've done for many, many years, for over 30 years, vocalist, guitar player. But I was into silver. I consider myself a silver bug. Less than I used to be, but still a silver bug going back to 2008, starting around 2008. I was buying silver low and selling high and, also just hoarding a little bit. So I think right around 2010, I first heard about Bitcoin and, I really just scrambled to try to figure out how I could make some money off of this. I was not really excited by the tech. I was excited because I saw the price going up in a really unusual way, right? Because I follow
arbitrage.
Yeah, so exactly. So I follow markets, somewhat in terms of investment. I don't have a lot of investments, but so I'm looking at this Bitcoin thing and I'm thinking, wow. And I'm reading what all these tech guys are saying, and I'm only understanding part of it. So, and then I'm trying to find out where I can buy it. I think I bought my very first Bitcoin. 2011 or late 2010 on eBay for $13 from this gal. You
got ripped off.
I got ripped off. I got totally ripped off, man. That's how I felt at the time. I'm like $13, and I didn't have to pay any shipping. I was happy about that. So then my next big thing was, okay, how can I get some Casacious or whatever you call them, Casacious coins from Mike there in Salt Lake City. And I bought a few of those. I was able to do that.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's a physical Bitcoin that he made, and
okay.
Yeah,
right.
He still makes them, I think, but he is no longer allowed. Well, he stopped putting the Bitcoin in them because he didn't want to get busted by the feds or FinCEN or whoever was, poised to come down on him. I think he made a smart decision, but that's good for me owning a couple of those physical Bitcoins, and he doesn't make those anymore. So theoretically, at some point, those could be very valuable. I have no idea, man. But it was a struggle finding out how to get Bitcoins, finding out how to fund an account, through Dwolla and then Mt. Gox. I was on Mt. Gox for a while. I had taken out a loan and actually bought some Bitcoins with a loan on Mt. Gox. And then, I pulled out of Mt. Gox probably 6 to 9 months before they went south. And that was because I was actually listening to people like Andreas Antonopoulos saying, man, you cannot keep your wealth on one of these exchanges and expect it to be there tomorrow, right? He was right, of course. So, that's really my history with Bitcoin. And then starting the podcast with Lidge and then talking to brilliant people all over the world and learning more and more and more and more so that, now I can talk pretty good Bitcoin talk with the layman. If you get me with the tech guys and they start throwing questions at me, though, they're going to understand pretty quickly that I don't really have a strong grasp of the very most technical parts of Bitcoin or the most technical parts of mining. Now, I really do understand. I think I have a pretty good understanding of how Bitcoin is going to work moving forward.
You pretty much described you got into Bitcoin pretty early. CCN didn't actually exist at that time. And the community was probably, I mean, I would say it's relatively small now, but what we call a community was a lot smaller even then. Did you go out looking for Let's Talk Bitcoin, or did it just kind of pop up at you and you said, wow, they need a good podcaster over there?
Yeah, it's funny, man, because I was just thinking about it the other day. I was looking for something Bitcoin related on YouTube, something specific, and I found it like that really fast. And I remember the early days wanting to hear more, learn more about Bitcoin, going onto YouTube, and there was nothing there. You'd find one little video or one little something, and there was nothing there. And that, looking back, that seems like it was 20, 30 years ago. It was only like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So it's amazing how fast this has taken off and how everybody and their grandmother is talking about Bitcoin in one way or another, whether it's financial or investment or goofy or whatever. So I didn't go looking for Let's Talk Bitcoin, but yeah, in my searching, I just found it, started listening to podcasts, among other podcasts and reading from other sites. But yeah, it was Bitcoin meetup, the very first Bitcoin meetup here in Nashville. I had been doing some recording and some voiceover work with my friend Lidge Shaw, who owns the Toy Box studio here in Nashville. We went to the Bitcoin meetup, and afterwards he said, man, we should start a podcast featuring you as the host about Bitcoin. And we thought about it and talked about it. And the very next day,
you said, that's a horrible idea.
Yeah, I said, that's a horrible idea. What are you, insane? No, I said, me as the host? Moi? I blushed and I said, well, I could never do anything like that. No. Anyway, so yeah, the very next day we saw on Let's Talk Bitcoin that it was the next day, the last day of their competition for new podcasts. They were looking for new podcasts. Well, we scrambled that night. We got somebody that we had just met from the Bitcoin meetup, and we interviewed him, put the show together. Lidge put the show together himself, just, slapped it together, threw it toward Let's Talk Bitcoin, and we won the editor's choice, and that got us going on Let's Talk Bitcoin. And I think at the time we were also on KCAA out of Loma Linda, California, which was cool because we were also on the radio simultaneously. We were radio stars overnight, It was very exciting. And then, I think about episode 28 or 29, Lidge decided he wanted to go his own way with his own podcasting. So that was the split when Lidge and I split, and I was on my own. And, it was scary doing a podcast on my own. And there was a learning curve. I had to learn how to do the editing. And I had already been doing editing, but how to do the whole Pro Tools, throw the show together. So it was a little shaky at first. I feel like I'm pretty good at it now. But at the same time, having done it now for 71 episodes, that's 71 weeks, it's taken its toll. I mean, I have a full-time job. Actually, in a way, I have 3 full-time jobs, and I just started a little company on the side. So it's hard to put a show together every week and to have it be interesting and dynamic. The key, of course, is find people to interview who are interesting and dynamic. And the shows that I've put out, I tend to enjoy more of the philosophy of the humanitarian aspects of what's going on in the world with people. How is this going to affect us? I enjoyed that more than talking about a new tech startup that's created a new wallet. I mean, that stuff is interesting, and yet having discussed that with so many different people and having read about that so much over the years, it really bores the crap out of me, to be honest, to talk about new startups and stuff, even though, I understand for them, they're starting up, they're just getting funding or they're looking for funding. It's the most exciting thing in the world when you're starting something. So I'm not, trying to disparage what anyone's trying to do. I'm simply saying that, I think I'm getting a little bit burned out with a lot of that. So,
yeah. So, I mean, you're working for the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, which I would think, as far as podcasting goes, I mean, in the Bitcoin space, it's kind of, the premier spot. So the owners of LTB network pay you money, or, how do you keep going with your show?
They're slave drivers, man. They're nothing but slave drivers. I feel like I'm basically just enslaved, to be honest. No, just kidding. No, I mean, Adam B. Levine is a phenomenal person. He is a mind that is certainly one of the most important minds in the Bitcoin sphere. He's close friends with Andreas Antonopoulos, if that tells you anything. We're known by the company we keep, but 2 brilliant guys, Stephanie Murphy, brilliant woman. So, the Bitcoin world, the Bitcoin sphere would not be what it is right now were it not for Adam B. Levine and what he has done, the shows that he has picked up and the show that he puts out. He's over 200 shows on his own. That's really substantial. And I am a volunteer. I have been doing it on a volunteer basis. I do earn LTB coin, and I do have a lot of LTB coin. But if you look at the price of LTB coin, obviously it's not something that is going to allow me to, retire or even pay my bills, really, and not even close. So I do still feel like, as a volunteer position, that I'm doing it as a labor of love. And I think that pretty much everybody on the LTB network who has a podcast or who offers written content, I feel that we're all working toward a common goal, and that is to better the world using Bitcoin. We know what Bitcoin can do. We're not just thinking of it as money or a currency, right? We see the bigger picture, the Bitcoin protocol and the blockchain. I mean, I love it. I love what I do. I have a little bit of burnout. And, I also have that pie in the sky, that hope that at some point, LTB coin will be worth, shoot, man, if an LTB coin was worth 25 cents each, I could retire. That'd be fantastic. But, we'll see. I know that Adam B. Levine has done so much with the LTB coin, and he has so much planned for the future. Honestly, there's so much going on with Let's Talk Bitcoin and what he has planned and what he has in the works that it's gotten away from me, just like a lot of things in the Bitcoin world. I have to say, honestly, I don't really fully understand. It sounds pathetic that, I work for Let's Talk Bitcoin, and yet I cannot go into detail about exactly what they're doing. And again, a lot of it's technical, I'll admit Adam B. Levine is a hell of a lot more intelligent than I am. The guy is friggin' brilliant, period.
Sure. So speaking of, the fluctuations in altcoin prices, I guess anyone holding some Litecoin in the past few days is, potentially people have made fortunes. The price has gone back up from under $2 into the $7 range.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting, given that on a recent episode of Bitcoins and Gravy, I learned from an individual from the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, that these coins only have one trajectory, and that is, top to bottom.
That guy from the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute is a very nice guy. I like him. I think he's a little bit misguided. I think he's young, so he's a little bit overly opinionated. Sometimes, when you're young, there could be a certain amount of egocentrism. To be egocentric is to, believe too strongly in what you happen to think. So there's nothing wrong with a strong ego. I have a strong ego, but I'm not egocentric, and there's a big difference. So I think that guy suffers from that a little bit as a young man, which I did as a young man, so I'm not faulting him. But yeah, the idea that he proposes that, altcoins are rubbish, that idea is rubbish. It's ridiculous because, as I explained to him, even if altcoins were never used for anything in commerce or anything in tech or anything at all, people out there who like to trade, who enjoy trading, who like the pump and dump, who like to ride the roller coaster wave of up and down, buy low, sell high, they will be trading altcoins till the end of time, or till electricity goes off. And if electricity goes off, they'll find a way to do it person to person. That's just the way that it is. That's a fact that you can't change that, right? That's not even talking about the utility. Is there utility to Litecoin?
Well, in a situation where you can't get a Bitcoin transaction through, which happened to me recently for the first time. So yeah, I think that Charlie Lee, the creator of Litecoin, he had an interview not long ago where he said, I think that the price of Litecoin goes up when the price of Bitcoin does. But I think that also when, Bitcoin is struggling, Litecoin sees gains as well.
I have to say, as far as the altcoins, I love the altcoins. I love the fact that so many people have been so creative in coming up with all of these alternative currencies. Of course, what really pisses me off is something that's to be expected, and that is if there's money to be made in something, peddling snake oil or whatever. People are going to do that. People are going to put something else in a bottle and try to sell it and try to make some money, even if what they're putting in the bottle they know is no good. So, there are definitely some bad players who have put out and who will continue to put out altcoins that rip people off the pump and dump and draw in the suckers and then take their money and then, abscond, but that's always going to be there. And, there's a learning curve if you're into trading, and there's a learning curve if you're into altcoins to, eventually gravitate toward, if you're intelligent or of average intelligence, to gravitate toward those coins that have utility or those coins that have a pretty nice, market cap, and, go with those that you are seeing as viable, that are allowing you to make some money, or that are allowing you to do something that you couldn't do without them, that you couldn't do before they existed. So, yeah, I mean, eventually the bad ones will fall off and the good ones will rise to the top, I think we're seeing that.
Right. And I couldn't agree more that, I don't think there's much to be gained in going on some kind of crusade against, other people trying to do a similar project. And, even Eric Voorhees, who's made millions and millions from Bitcoin related projects, even he is no longer envisions, a future that only has Bitcoin. So if a guy like him comes around, I think that pretty much everyone is destined to. So you've been to some of these Bitcoin conferences, haven't you, John?
I've actually been to only two, and they were both the Texas Bitcoin Conference, 2014 and 2015.
How did it go? And, do you think that it had a huge impact on the local community as far as giving them an introduction to Bitcoin or anything like that?
I can say with certainty, I don't think that any Bitcoin conference is making waves in the city where they have that conference, making waves that ripple out and affect the, the infrastructure of the city and the people in the city. I think it certainly affects some people in the city, but really, I think it's more of a time. Mostly, I think it's a time when people can get together and they can meet other people of like minds. They can learn things that they didn't previously know. They can have conversations they would not have had if they just stayed in their bedroom sitting at their computer. And, they can hear speakers speak about subjects that maybe they've heard about before. They can get some more details. They can, basically learn more than they already knew. But really, I feel like it's a time when people can come together in the Bitcoin community and just powwow. I mean, this is age old. The fur traders would get together and they'd trade furs and they'd drink. I mean, lots of groups get together. You'll have, people that are into fantasy football. They get together and they do their thing and they have a good time. I think it's the same kind of thing. It's a sense of camaraderie. It's a sense of meeting other people that have that believe the same thing that you believe. So it is very empowering to go to a Bitcoin conference, certainly, and to talk with people who, basically agree with you for the most part about the importance of Bitcoin and what's going on with the tech. So yeah, I think it's invaluable. I think it's important. I think there will always be Bitcoin conferences. If I had money, I'd be going to every single one of them all over the world. I think it'd be a blast. I'd love to play my Bitcoin songs at all these conferences, but there's a certain lack of creativity and with a lot of these tech folks, and a certain lack of a sense of humor with a lot of these tech folks, which I think is sad. But I think you're going to find that in any industry that goes from being really interesting and creative to being really serious and financial and tech. I just think that's a natural thing. But I love the Bitcoin conferences, man. Do I think that a single Bitcoin conference can radically change things in the Bitcoin world or in the non-Bitcoin world? No, not really.
So you enjoy going anyways. I mean, it's not like you go to Comic-Con if you're not a comic book fan, I guess.
Right. Yeah, you just wouldn't go. And also when I go to the Bitcoin conferences,
Mike Hearn and Gavin Andreessen,
those guys, oh my gosh.
I've seen you, say more than once, that you're really upset with Mr. Andreessen at this point in time. You want to tell us about that?
Well, I think the first thing that really made me angry about him is his haircut.
Right? I know.
No, I mean, I grew up watching the Three Stooges, and I love the Three Stooges. And Mo was always the most aggressive one. Why I oughta bonk. You know, he would hit those guys so much. And Gavin's more of a pacifist, but that Mo haircut, it infuriates me. I don't know why. It's like it's inexplicable. It's like when I hear the word Bananas Foster, like you're at a restaurant and so what do you have for dessert? And the waitress says, we have chocolate cake and ice cream and Bananas Foster. I almost go into a rage, and I don't know why. It's inexplicable. Just the term Bananas Foster makes me so angry. I can't even tell you. I don't know why. I have no idea why. But anyway, it's the same thing. I have the same reaction to Gavin's hair thing. So the other thing that infuriates me about him is these little jabs he makes at people who have religious beliefs, these little jabs he makes, from an atheist perspective. It's like, dude, you're in tech. It's not your job to jab at people who have religious beliefs. If people have religious beliefs and you don't happen to believe in God, or you consider yourself agnostic or an atheist, leave it alone. Don't act like a 5-year-old and have to make jabs at people because of their religious beliefs.
The last time this popped up about Luke Jr., I contacted him directly, and talked to him about it, and it really has nothing to do with gambling. It's way overblown when they talk about the patches he's made for the e-build of the Gen 2 version of Bitcoin Core. Yeah. So I think it's a valid point that, to bring that up in any serious discussion now, 4 years later, it doesn't matter. I mean, Luke Jr. has made, a lot of contributions to Bitcoin. I think they should both treat each other with respect, and I think that Luke's religious beliefs should be left out of it altogether.
Really, when it comes to Gavin and Mike, what those guys are talking about, I really think that they're talking about something that's premature. I think that they're talking about something that really could be addressed in a much more intelligent, gentle, slow-moving, thoughtful way. We really seriously do not need to be pushing this idea that everybody and their mother needs to be using Bitcoin for, as money immediately, so that everybody should be able to go shopping and shop at Macy's and shop at Target and shop at Walmart and buy Coca-Cola and Starbucks coffee using Bitcoin. I mean, who really cares? I mean, yeah, it'd be great if that happened, but something digital will happen in the future. Certainly governments are going to have their own form of digital currency, and governments are going to try to control people as much as possible because they need that tax money, and they're going to extract that tax money and coerce people to pay that tax money. That will never end. That will be with us until the end of time. It's the good against the bad. It's the age-old concept of good against evil that Joseph Campbell speaks of when he writes in one of his great books, probably his greatest work, The Power of Myth, right? This idea that the forces of good and the forces of evil will always battle, and there will always be mythologies that build up around these that we can grab onto. We can say, I am on the side of good and I will fight for good. And the people on the side of evil, they very rarely say, I'm on the side of evil and we're going to screw you. In their own weird ways, they think that they're doing what's right. But, they're generally a little bit more blind and a little bit less thoughtful and a little bit less concerned about what's important for other humans than the people who are on the good side. So I just think that Gavin and Mike need to take a step back. They need to really listen. Number one, they need to really listen to what people are saying in the Bitcoin community. And they need to listen to the people, not the people who have their minds set on profit, right? Making money. They need to be listening to the people who really understand the bigger picture and what Bitcoin can really do to help humanity. They need to be listening to people like Andreas Antonopoulos and people like Venzen, who I interviewed on the last show, people who really have a heart and who really care. If you're just listening to people like Slush is a great guy. Slush runs a great pool, but Slush has, one main objective. I think he's a fair-minded person, but his main objective is money and profit. So, if Gavin's going to be listening to people, Gavin and Mike are going to be listening to people who just want to profit or whose primary objective is profit, I think they're listening to the wrong people.
Thank you for your time today, John. I think we're about all out of it.
It was great, man. It was great talking to you, Paul.
I did appreciate getting a little more in depth with you, and everyone check out John's show every week on letstalkbitcoin.com. That's Bitcoins and Gravy. How can they reach you, John?
Yeah, that's the best way. You can email me at howdy, that's HOWDY, as in howdy at bitcoinsandgravy.com. And you can always find the show on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. And of course, you can go to my website, which is bitcoinsandgravy.com. I will say, Paul, thank you so much for having me on the show. This was exciting. It's the first time I've ever been interviewed. No one has ever wanted to interview me before. So thank you so much for doing that. And
okay, well, have a good day then, John.
Now climb aboard, y'all. This train is bound for glory, and there's plenty of room for all. Well, Satoshi Nakamoto, that's a name I love to say, and we don't know much about him, but he came to save the day. When he wrote about the way things are and the way things ought to be, he gave us all a protocol this world had never seen. Oh, Bitcoin, as you're going into the old blockchain. Oh, Bitcoin, I know you're going to reign, till everybody knows, till everybody knows your name. Down the road it will be told about the death of old Mount Gox, about traders trading altar coins and miners mining blocks. But them good old boys back in Illinois and on down through Tennessee, see, they don't care to be a millionaire, they're just wanting to be free. Oh, Bitcoin, as you're going into the old blockchain. Oh, Bitcoin, I know you're going to reign, till everybody knows, till everybody knows your name. Halls of Parliament, while the bankers count our money out for every government. Oh, Bitcoin flies on through the skies of virtuality, a promise to deliver us from age-old tyranny. Oh, Bitcoin, as you're going into the old blockchain. Oh, Bitcoin, I know you're going to reign, till everybody knows, till everybody knows your name. Till everybody knows, till everybody knows your. Give me some exposure. Everybody knows your name. Sing it. Oh Lord, pass me some more. Oh Lord, before I have to go. Oh Lord, pass me some more. Oh Lord, before I have to go. Thank you, East Nashville. Y'all be good to each other out there, you hear?
And so I'm on the line here with Andrew Vegetabile, the director of the Litecoin Foundation. Litecoin
Association.
Association. I always get that mixed up. It's
all right.
It serves a similar function that the Bitcoin Foundation was meant to, I believe. But anyway, I mean, if you don't know what Litecoin is, you've obviously been living under a rock for a few years. But recently, Litecoin has picked up trading volume like crazy. I mean, and the price has gone from under $2 up into, it's pushing toward $10. It is up over $7 the last time I looked, and that's just, that's crazy growth for a coin of this age. By this time in its life cycle, it's kind of either winning or losing. It's basically its best days are behind it. It would seem. What do you think is contributing, to this resurgence in Litecoin activity, Andrew?
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and I think it's not just one particular issue or one particular thing that's getting ready to happen. I think it's just a combination of multiple things going on, and as well as people maybe finally realizing that, there are places for other coins out there aside from just Bitcoin. With that said, we still work as close as possible as we can with Bitcoin, and we're basically not trying to take them over, but we want to become a supplement to them, saying that we are another blockchain that can help evolve the crypto ecosystem. So my first thought when this started off was Litecoin block halving is coming up. So in about 45-ish days, we're going to have our very first halving. And, that's a significant milestone for any coin to go through. So we're going to go from 50 Litecoins down to 25 Litecoins released every 2.5 minutes. And I think that's part of it, and people are starting to accumulate the coin out of, probably speculation, assuming that obviously everyone else is going to be assuming coins, and there's going to be less distributed throughout the network.
So you're saying there's an anticipation of less inflation, basically.
Absolutely.
So you think that's contributing? And
I think that's contributing. The excitement of it is definitely contributing, yes.
And so at the same time, Bitcoin is having a lot of problems. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. I think it's hard not to notice all of that. That was really going to be my the next point that I make, and one of those things that everything's just falling, at once, or falling into place at once, that's causing the price surge and the volume surge. There's for lack of a better terms, the political infighting that's going on with Bitcoin right now with various leaders in their community. Not pointing fingers at anyone and not really going to mention anything beyond that. The 20 megabyte block discussion that's also going on, which is part of the fighting itself. And then lastly, there's the whole clogging up the network with the transactions. Someone looks like that they attempted to do a stress test a week or two ago. Stress test is, I assume, continuing, and it looks more to be like an attack.
I don't know. I didn't follow that story. I was on other ones, but I did notice it. So yeah, and this is interesting to me because Charlie Lee, I believe it was earlier this year, or it could have been the end of last year, that he said Litecoin will thrive when Bitcoin thrives. But, Bitcoin's seen somewhat modest gains, and, percentage-wise and by comparison, Litecoin has seen massive gains. So, I think this goes kind of counter to his belief that Bitcoin needs to be doing well for Litecoin to be doing very well. You could see the opposite happen, where if Bitcoin begins to stumble, then Litecoin can gain from that.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what I was mentioning before, where there's a lot of issues with Bitcoin happening right now with the transaction, spam attacks, forking, political infighting, the 20 megabyte solution. A lot of this stuff we've already solved, and I think people are starting to understand that. We already have anti-spam resilience built into the code. That Charlie actually did a GitHub pull 3 years ago and suggested the same exact thing for Bitcoin, and he was rejected. We went ahead and implemented it, so guess what? That attack that's going on right now, it would not be nearly as significant or a problem for us. Another thing, the whole 20 megabyte block discussion issue, just for the simple fact, the way that we built our infrastructure, that we're 2.5 minute per block as opposed to 10, means that we wouldn't be having this issue that Bitcoin is having coming up with the proposed, what is it, end of next year, end of 2016 max block issue. So I think a lot of people are starting to realize and understand that we've already solved these problems, which is kind of what altcoins are theoretically there to do is to become prototypes for Bitcoin, to say we can test these features, we can test this, and we can test that, figure out what works and incorporate it in Bitcoin. Well, we've already solved these issues. I'm waiting to see the developers actually implement some of the issues. Of course, they can't implement the 2.5 minute.
I think that the Bitcoin development team could, actually do anything that Litecoin has done. I heard that you were working on a paper about the Paycoin issue. Like when this whole Paycoin problem was really a lot bigger than it is now. I think that everyone involved in the Paycoin scandal is kind of just accepting their fate or something, or it's going to the courts, whatever, but it's all died down now, and Josh Garza's not heard from, and Hashtalk's disappeared. But in any case, at that point, I guess it was a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago, you were saying, well, the Paycoin crowd, the people who own the coin, they should just fork it and take their coins back, and take it on a new path, a new development path. Mm-hmm. And so now you've written a paper about the ethics of doing that.
Yeah, I wrote a paper, and it's been about a month and a half, 2 months working on it, relatively long. It's an academic paper, and there's a couple reasons why I wanted to do it. It initially did start with an argument between myself and someone else on Bitcoin Talk, specifically about Paycoin and forking. There's a lot of discussion surrounding the argument about it's unethical, it's unmoral, you can't do that, just several different things. And then I basically said, you can't just look at it from that viewpoint. There have been forks in the past. There have been, reasons why a coin had to fork for its own livelihood. And I think looking at it from an objective, non-emotional standpoint is the approach that I tried to take, and I think I did a relatively good job. The paper is called An Objective Look into the Impacts of Forking Blockchains Due to Malicious Actors. So I basically, the paper starts off with an introduction. I start talking about a fork, both from forking a coin due to, a malicious actor, or forking as in what we discussed earlier with what just happened with Bitcoin, but also fork as in code forking. For, as was mentioned before, Litecoin is a fork of Bitcoin. And, I try to put into perspective that, every single altcoin out there is really just a fork of Bitcoin. So you might as well call them Bitcoin Litecoin or Bitcoin Dogecoin. So I'm just trying to put a little perspective around that. And I get into the difference between POW, POS, miners, and exchanges. A phrase that I coined last year in another paper I wrote during the Dogecoin Aux POW, aka merged mining that happened. The term is called loss of confidence effect. And then I get into examples, and I talk about MintPal, BTR getting hacked, coins that have forked or refused to fork, legal aspects, and then I get into some hypothetical situations like, what if this happened? Really, honest to God, if, let's say the U.S. government decided that they want to get in Bitcoin, and they decided they were going to build up the ASIC infrastructure in order to take over the network, 51% of it. All right, so now they own it. And if you own 51% of it, you can technically own the rules. And now they start enforcing what a lot of people wouldn't want to do, legal rules into the actual blockchain itself. So at that point, Bitcoin essentially turns into something completely different than what it was created to do. So what do? You have this community that is got taken over by the U.S. government through the blockchain because they can now enforce their rules. So what do? Do you fork or do you not? Is it ethical or is it not? So there's a lot of good information, a lot of good thoughts on this, and it's really the reason I wanted to do it is because I wanted people to really take a good look, an objective look into all of the things that could potentially happen, and all the aspects surrounding that. So
Okay.
it's
So
hosted.
where can people find it? Yeah.
Okay, so it's hosted by the Digital Currency Council. They're courteous and hosted the paper for me. I've actually posted links both in the general section Bitcoin Talk as well as the general section Litecoin Talk. And if you follow me on Twitter at the Real Mage, I just tweeted about it tonight.
Great. So that was last night for those listening, but yeah, great. So you just, you're talking about the ethics really of the majority of a coin, the majority of the stakeholders in a given blockchain taking it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very interesting thing to write a paper about. I can see the appeal, but yeah, like you said, academic papers require a massive amount of time investment. So speaking of time investment, there's another project that you were involved with that's, truly coin agnostic. It is a coin exchange. I guess
Mm-hmm.
you're calling it Coinix.
Yes, it's so about a year ago, I guess I assembled a team. I wanted to get in this. This is for me selfishly, of course. I work during the daytime, but I want to do 100% cryptos. I love cryptocurrencies, love Litecoin. I love working with the community, and I love learning personally. And there's always new stuff to learn getting involved with cryptos. So I wanted to create a company that can basically live off of and still be involved with it. So I wanted to open an exchange, but beyond that, we plan on doing more than just an exchange, both in the short term and the far term future. So we've been working on CoinX for over a year now, and within the next week or two, we're going to start sending emails out for a closed beta session, basically to get some general feedback from some individuals, as well as checking for any bugs people may find, which I doubt they will. But yeah, very excited about rolling this out. So we're going to do the closed beta, and that's going to be with some testnet coins, and then we'll do a open beta for everyone. When we do the open beta, we're going to have 0 fees. Let people come in, fool around with it, do some trades, see if they like it, and hopefully they do, and they stick around with us. And then after we close that open beta session, we'll go ahead and do a full launch, and just like any typical exchange, we'll be there. We have blog posts that we're also going to be hosting as well for the community, basically information, thoughts on subjects. So we're really trying to build up that infrastructure right now.
Great. So you said when? I think I missed it. When is your actual full launch going to be?
We don't have a date for the full launch yet. That's going to be dependent on the feedback we get from the closed beta session. We're hoping that we'll be able to do an open beta for everyone within a month-ish time frame.
So what's going to make your exchange different from say Cribsy?
Well, a couple different things, really. For one, the owner itself is actively involved with multiple communities, and as we were just talking about, release the paper, very involved, very loving. I do a lot for not just Litecoin, but also do a lot for other communities as well. I mentioned Dogecoin earlier in the conversation. When they had their merge mine going on, I was actually there helping them, sending emails out to exchanges, sending emails out to pools and things like that to make sure that they get upgraded. So I would hope that people see that as very favorably, and they understand that, hey, this guy does a lot for the ecosystem as a whole and for cryptos. He's not just some guy who's just trying to come in and just make a quick buck, because that's not really what I'm there for. I'm here to not here to make a quick buck.
Right.
The other thing is that one of the interesting one of the interesting things that we're going to be doing is not just Bitcoin that's going to have every trading pair. We're going to open up every trading pair for Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin as well. So we're looking forward to seeing how that works out, because as far as I know, I think that would be the first time any exchange has attempted to do that.
No, not at all.
No, really?
C-CX actually used to have every like trading pair. Like you could trade anything to anything. Recently, they changed it to NXT, Doge, and Litecoin and Bitcoin as the primary trading.
I was just, one last thing I was going to add. We're also a registered company, registered in the state of Texas, fully legal. We're also going to be FinCEN compliant, which is a taboo subject in this in the ecosystem itself. But we are going to be full FinCEN compliant. And
what about New York? Are you going to service New York? Are you going to?
We have been watching the BitLicense issue evolve, and it's not just New York. It's California is also doing some propositions now, I believe as well.
Well, they decided at one point, California decided to leave it on the table, to just put it for later, and then I guess something came out within the past couple of days. It's pretty favorable. So California, I think, may try to play the haven role where companies that can't really function in New York will wind up moving to Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, we are definitely watching the issue evolve. We're keeping tabs on it. That's really the best thing I can say right now. It's going to have to be a business decision, because if they make it too painful for us as a small business to open up shop in New York, we're going to have to say, we're sorry, those of you in New York, we'd love to be able to bring our services to you, but unfortunately your state is not making it reliable for a small business to do so.
So I guess listeners, look out for CoinX, a new competitor in the altcoin exchange space. As Andrew mentioned, it's by a very active community participant, and so that should so you have a good chance to get to know the guy that actually owns the thing. I guess you could go and look at all his old Bitcoin talk posts and whatnot, and if he winds up making off with your money, then I know where he lives in Maryland, so we'll just go get him. No.
Absolutely.
No, I'm just kidding. So cool. Well, thanks for talking to me tonight, Andrew.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Love coming and talking to you, Paul.
Thanks again for tuning in to this weekend edition of the CCN podcast, coming to you every Friday from ccn.la. I'm Paul Modor, signing off. Visit me at phm.link.